Shooters are getting bigger and more insane. And fortunately, that means a lot more of them are happening. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, 10 upcoming shooter games with over-the-top action. At number 10, it's Necromunda Hired Gun. Taking place in the Warhammer 40k universe, Necromunda is kind of a cyberpunk, but also distinctly Warhammer dystopian hive city, and kind of looks to incorporate some ideas from Dishonored, particularly bionic abilities, although it doesn't do them as runes or mystical upgrades. You also see some stuff present from more parkour-oriented games like Mirror's Edge. You have wall running, you have dashes, you have grappling hooks. Grappling hook looks a little bit like Blink from Dishonored, a little bit like Doom Eternal's grappling hook as well. Now, keeping in mind that Dishonored is kind of a more stealth-oriented game, and this looks very much along the lines of Doom in terms of the way the action gameplay is paced, really how everything is paced specifically. It looks to have a much faster rhythm than Dishonored. You can definitely see the Doom influence, but I do think that the Dishonored influence is pretty clear as well. I think this is really interesting because what you basically do is in this city take on bounty contracts and you go to take them out. There's also a robotic dog kind of companion that you can upgrade through the course of the game. So I'm looking forward to however they emotionally manipulate us with that. Necromunda Hired Gun is hitting June 1st. At number 9 is Exomecha. Sometimes it seems a lot like there are a lot of mech games out there, but there really aren't, and it's always nice to see more of them. This one specifically is a free-to-play online competitive first-person shooter that to me looks like a faster pace Halo with elements of Titanfall and various battle royale games. It kind of also reminds me of like Japanese robot fighting live action TV shows from the 90s in some ways. It's particularly the types of mechs that are in this game. They really have that sort of man in a suit look to them, which is not something you would typically go for. And I think that there's an interesting charm to that. And the setting kind of reminds me of Crysis a bit. Altogether, it looks like it could be a pretty interesting game. They also promise boss fights in it, which I'm not 100% sure exactly how that works on account it's basically what appears to be a competitive multiplayer shooter. That being said, that could also figure into a very interesting set of dynamics, especially if everybody who's fighting each other suddenly has to fight a big monster of some kind or whatever. To have everybody stop fighting each other and suddenly have to take on a much larger menace could be an interesting switch up, especially if somebody has the advantage of having a mech when somebody else doesn't. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but it sounds interesting. Exomecha looks pretty interesting. It's coming to PC, Xbox One X, Series X, and Series S sometime this year. At number 8 is Deathloop, which is coming to PC and PS5. Deathloop is the latest from Arcane Studios, the fantastic developers behind Prey, Dishonored, Dishonored 2, and the various DLC. And it looks very much like a cousin or the offspring of Dishonored. This is one we've been paying attention to for a while, and it really looks like it's probably going to be a high-profile release. A little bit faster paced and a lot more high concept in terms of what kind of actual world/story you're dealing with. A lot of similar powers, though, which is the basic reason why I'm interested in this game. It looks like they've done a lot to sort of harness what makes Dishonored cool and make it into something that in some ways is a bit like Hitman, but more focused. It's obviously not open world like Hitman, but Dishonored kind of functions like a puzzle game in that it gives you a lot of different ways to solve what you're doing. And this kind of looks like it continues that idea. Basically, you play on a death loop. Yes, it is one of those games that describes the game itself in the title, which is always a good thing. You continually go through the same situations until you die, with the eventual hope of taking out the assassin that is killing you. As far as I'm concerned, pairing that with the Arcane Studios style of gameplay, it would be pretty hard for this one not to be good. Deathloop is coming to PC and PS5, like I said. It will be landing May 21st, and I will be playing it. At number 7 is Aliens Fireteam. Aliens Fireteam is a cooperative third-person survival shooter that looks a lot like Aliens meets Left 4 Dead. Now that sounds particularly simple, but apparently there's over 20 enemy types and 5 unique classes to choose from for your character, over 30 weapons, over 70 mods and attachments for the weapons, and the game even has its own ability to vary the experience by incorporating a challenge card on a per mission basis. My understanding of that is it's basically going to draw some type of debuff debuff or situation you have to deal with for that mission, and that varies up what you're dealing with, which is honestly not the worst idea on account this is the type of game we've seen a lot of, so trying new things is of course a good idea. It looks pretty good. I like the corridor-oriented level design that I'm seeing so far. In terms of how fun that could be in co-op, it definitely yields to a team dynamic in which you can, I think, fairly easily cover each other, and I look forward to seeing it in mid-2021 when it lands on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One X, Series X, and Series S. At number 6 is Bright Memory Infinite, a game selling itself as a lightning-fast fusion of FPS and action. The game is set in the year 2036 in a big futuristic metropolis setting, but there's actually quite a bit of variance in terms of what exactly we're looking at. Like, the footage actually looks like it takes place in the Japanese countryside, but clearly, as I said, it takes place in a metropolis, so something is not as it seems. There is swordplay and gunplay, as well as grappling hook-oriented dynamics, a parkour system, and the ability to stop time. The real strength of this game looks to be like it's building itself into the ability to string all of these various things together. For instance, we see in the footage a lot of chaining attacks by suspending enemies in the air and pausing time, and that could be pretty interesting gameplay. Now, this stuff probably sounds all overwhelming together, but watching people play it, not only does this game have really good looking graphics and a pretty wide variance in types of environments they've shown off, you have all the types of gameplay I described, as well as driving and vehicular combat. They tease out the game as a platform for a mystery story about the as yet unknown history of two worlds. Obviously, there's not a lot to expand upon there, but the gameplay really looks good. Bright Memory Infinite is coming to PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S sometime this year. At number 5 is Trepang 2, a gun-fu first-person shooter, meaning a game that wants you to feel like you're in the Matrix. And if you've played the demo of the game, you know that it pretty much completely delivers on that. I highly recommend you download the demo off Steam right now. It is free, it is very worth your time, and I think it'll probably sell you. It sold me on it. If you've ever played Fear, it's a lot like that, except for a completely different environment, more or less. It's obviously less horror-oriented and more action-oriented, but you can utilize stealth up until you decide it is time to just go nuts. And it's not just the guns that are really satisfying to use. Melee combat is very good in this game. It's very fluid. Slowing down time to dodge bullets is very satisfying. And the AI is actually good. It reacts to you very well and can actually put up a decent fight. It is a fairly gory game for what it is, which is kind of surprising, but it works quite well for a game where bullets are just flying everywhere and you're slowing down time, to have over-the-top kind of Mortal Kombat looking animations, because over-the-top is definitely the way to describe this game. Trepang 2 is coming out on PC sometime this year. At number 4 is Severed Steel, a voxel FPS with a fully destructible environment. Now, this game does not bother with realism on any factor, and that's probably a good idea, because this sort of arcadey, over-the-top, sliding around, destroying environments type action looks like it is tremendously fun. It might remind you a little bit of Super Hot or Bulletstorm. It might give you a little bit of a John Wick meets Ghost Runner type thing going on as well. It's got table sliding and wall running, the types of stuff you can start expecting, I think, more of in these type of cyberpunk dystopia type games. However, it's a lot more colorful and less dingy than other versions of this type of thing. There's a really cool shooting behind the back mechanic that they showed in the trailer, though, that you don't see a lot of that type of thing in games. Severed Steel is coming to PC, PS4, Xbox One as well, and is coming out sometime this year. At number 3 is Second Extinction, a dinosaur first-person shooter that has been in early access since last October. It's a game that is supposedly going to launch sometime this year and has gotten some complaints about limited content. However, the reason we're mentioning it is because the gameplay is incredibly smooth. It has gorgeous graphics. It's incredibly fun. And although it's a little bit difficult as a single-player game, is co-op and works really well as a co-op game. It is a little rough in early access, though, in terms of like matchmaking and some interface stuff, but the game's got a huge map, you're fighting against dinosaurs, and if you play it in early access, you supposedly have some degree of influence over how the final game comes out. So obviously, if you're looking for the experience, now is actually a great time. It is a lot of fun, like I said. The final version of Second Extinction is coming to PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S, supposedly Q2 of this year. At number 2 is Dying Light 2, which has made a lot of big promises that have caused a lot of big delays, but supposedly we will be seeing it this year. Narratively speaking, this is really where they have given an indication they are trying to revolutionize what they're doing. Now, we've heard this many, many times before, and I've said it many, many times before, but the idea is to make a game where player choice is king. Now, not player choice as in you get 2 or 3 choices along the way, get a different ending, but choices that have sort of a butterfly effect on the world they exist in and make big changes as to the types of goals, types of enemies, types of scenarios that you get into, and attempting that type of thing, well, it's a large-scale project. But being it is the sequel to Dying Light, the parkour zombie game, if they pull it off, it's probably going to be pretty darn good. Dying Light is a really enjoyable game itself, and given they have been trying to do a large amount in upgrading the sequel into a much bigger, better, and hopefully narratively rich experience, I'm looking forward to see what they come up with. And finally, at number 1 is Warhammer 40k Darktide, the other Warhammer 40k game on this list. They are not playing around with first-person shooters and the Warhammer franchise. This one looks pretty different. It is a 4-player co-op game set in a different high city called Tertium. This one kind of seems a little bit along the lines of Warhammer 40k 4 Dead, and I am there for that. I like Warhammer 40k. I love Left 4 Dead, and the developers have promised what they're doing is essentially building on Vermintide 2's melee combat for this game, mixing that along with what they're calling deep and balanced gunplay. This could frankly be a very, very good version of the Left 4 Dead type genre game. Warhammer 40k Darktide is coming to Xbox Series X and S as well as PC, supposedly sometime this year. That is all for today. Are you going to play any of these games? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on GameRanks.